Good evening and welcome to a cozy night of historical disasters. Tonight's bedtime story is a real scorcher. We're travelling back to 1966, to the Great Fire of London, when an entire city discovered what happens when you build everything out of wood, tar and poor life choices. And before you get too comfortable thinking, well, I'd simply not live in a tinderbox, let me stop you right there. You wouldn't have survived this one. Not because you're not smart, but because literally nothing about 17th century London was designed with human survival in mind. So go ahead and settle in. Adjust your perfectly fire code compliant heating system. Maybe check that your smoke detectors have batteries, just for fun. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from tonight. I love knowing who else is awake at this hour, choosing chaos and catastrophe over counting sheep. Even the dog knows this is going to be rough. But don't worry, I'll be here the whole time, keeping you company from the safety of the 21st century, while we explore why you definitely, absolutely, would not have made it out of London's spiciest week alive. Now, let me paint you a picture of September Honest, 1666. Picture yourself tucked into bed in London on a Saturday night. Not modern London, with its underground trains and coffee shops on every corner. No, this is 1666 London, where the city planning was done by someone who apparently thought, what if we made everything as flammable as possible, and then squeezed it all together like sardines in a matchbox? You're lying in your bed, which is really just a wooden frame with a straw-stuffed mattress that's home to more creatures than a small zoo. Your house, made of wood. Your roof, covered in thatch, which is basically hay that's been promoted to architectural material. The tar-sealed walls? That's right, they waterproofed houses with actual tar, because apparently nobody in medieval city planning thought, tar plus wood plus open flames equals maybe a bad time. The streets outside are narrower than a modern parking space. Houses lean out over them, each floor jutting out further than the one below, until neighbours on upper floors could literally reach across and borrow a cup of sugar without leaving their homes, assuming they had sugar. Which they didn't, because sugar cost more than your monthly rent. But here's what really would have killed you: the complete absence of anything resembling fire safety. Every single house has multiple open flames burning all day and night. Candles, oil lamps, kitchen fires that never go out because matches haven't been invented yet, and starting a fire from scratch is harder than getting a straight answer from a politician. The whole city is basically 13. 0 little fire hazards, all holding hands. And water? Oh, that's adorable that you think there's running water. Water comes from wells, communal pumps, or the Thames, which at this point is less a river and more a flowing garbage disposal. Fighting fires means forming a bucket brigade, which is exactly as effective as it sounds when you're trying to stop a wall of flames with what amounts to a very slow, very human sprinkler system. Let's talk about your neighbours for a moment. London in 1666 has around 400 people crammed into the old medieval city walls. That's roughly the population of modern-day New Orleans, except squeezed into about 1 square mile. Everyone lives on top of everyone else, literally. Families of 8 share single rooms. Apprentices sleep under their master's shop counters. The concept of personal space hasn't been invented yet, and won't be for another few centuries. Your typical neighbour might be a baker who keeps his ovens burning 24 hours a day because bread doesn't bake itself and cold ovens are bad for business. Or maybe a blacksmith whose forge sends sparks dancing into the night sky like tiny arsonist fireflies. Could be a tallow chandler literally melting animal fat over open flames all day to make candles. Every profession in London seems specifically designed to burn the city down. And storage? Oh boy. See, Londoners in 1666 are pack rats by necessity. There's no Amazon Prime, no grocery stores. You buy in bulk when you can, and store it where you can. That means your neighbour's attic is probably full of hay for his horses. The shop downstairs has barrels of oil and pitch. The merchant next door? He's got a basement full of coal, and, because he's also part of the militia, several barrels of gunpowder, just sitting there, under his house, like a bomb waiting for a fuse. The buildings themselves are disasters waiting to happen. They're built with timber frames, filled in with wattle and daub, which sounds quaint until you realise it's basically sticks and dried mud. The timbers are often reused from older buildings or ships, meaning they're already dried out and perfect for burning. The upper floors hang out over the lower ones in what's called jettying, which looks picturesque in tourist photos, but basically turns every street into a tunnel of flammable material. Fire prevention in 1666 consists mainly of hope and a leather bucket. Every household is supposed to have fire buckets ready, but enforcement is about as effective as telling teenagers to clean their rooms. There's a night watch who are supposed to patrol for fires, but they're mostly elderly men who got the job because they can't do real work anymore. Their main qualification is being able to stay awake, which they often can't. The city does have some firefighting equipment. There are fire hooks, long poles with hooks on the end for pulling down burning buildings. There are ladders, usually too short to be useful. There are a few primitive fire engines, which are basically large squirt guns on wheels that require a team of men to operate and produce about as much water pressure as a tired sneeze. The main firefighting strategy is to create fire breaks by demolishing buildings in the fire's path, which requires the owner's permission. Good luck getting someone to agree to have their house torn down, because it might catch fire later. Now, about that baker on Pudding Lane. Thomas Fariner isn't a bad guy. He's not trying to burn London down. He's just a baker doing baker things, which in 1666 means keeping ovens hot enough to bake the king's bread. Yeah, he's actually the king's baker, which will become ironic later when the king has to help fight the fire that starts in his baker's shop. Pudding Lane, despite its delicious name, has nothing to do with dessert. It's named after the puddings, animal guts and waste that butchers would haul down the lane to dump in the Thames. Appetising, right? It's a narrow street near London Bridge, packed with wooden houses and shops, all built so close together you could probably jump from roof to roof if you were feeling athletic and stupid. On this particular Saturday night, Fariner has finished his work, banked his fires, or so he thinks, and gone to bed with his family in the rooms above the bakery. It's been a long day of baking bread for Sunday, because even in the 17th century, people want fresh bread for their day off. The ovens are still warm, which is normal. They're always warm. It takes too much fuel and time to let them cool completely and reheat them. But somewhere in those ovens, something is still burning. Maybe a coal wasn't properly doused. Maybe a spark found some flour dust. Maybe fate just decided London had been unburned for too long. Whatever the cause, around 1 a.m. on Sunday, September 2nd, 1666, a small fire starts in Fariner's bakery. In any other city, in any other time, this might have been a minor incident, a small fire, quickly discovered, quickly doused. But this is London in 1666, where everything that could go wrong is about to go wrong in spectacular fashion. First, there's the weather. London hasn't seen significant rain in months. Everything is bone dry. The timber in the houses is like kindling. The thatch on the roofs is basically hay waiting for a spark. The goods stored in every house, cloth, coal, oil, tallow, gunpowder, are all perfectly prepared to burn. Second, there's the wind. A strong east wind has been blowing for days. In maritime terms, this is great for ships trying to leave the Thames. In fire terms, this is catastrophic. The wind will push the fire west, straight into the heart of the city, and give it all the oxygen it needs to grow from a bakery fire to a city-destroying inferno. Third, there's the response, or rather, the lack of one. The Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, will be woken up in about an hour to be told about the fire. His response will go down in history as one of the worst disaster management decisions ever made. He'll take one look at the fire, declare it insignificant, say, "Pish. A woman could piss it out," and go back to bed. By the time he realizes his mistake, it'll be far too late. Meanwhile, you're still asleep in your bed, blissfully unaware that your city is about to burn for 4 days straight. You're dreaming whatever people dream when they don't have television or social media to fill their heads with nonsense. Maybe you're dreaming about having 2 pairs of shoes. Maybe you're dreaming about bread that doesn't have sand in it from the millstones. Maybe you're dreaming about a London that doesn't smell like a combination of horse manure and human waste. In about an hour, the smell of smoke will wake you. But not just any smoke. The kind of smoke that makes your primitive brain scream danger even before your conscious mind figures out what's happening. The kind of smoke that carries with it the smell of burning tar, burning wood, burning everything. But for now, you sleep. The last peaceful sleep you'll have for quite some time. Because when you wake up, you'll be thrust into a fight for survival in a city that's about to demonstrate exactly why building everything out of wood and keeping open flames everywhere was probably not the best urban planning decision. The Great Fire of London is about to begin, and you, my friend, are about to discover that all your modern knowledge about fire safety, evacuation procedures, and basic survival won't help you one bit when the entire city becomes one giant furnace, and your only firefighting equipment is harsh language and leather buckets. Sweet dreams. You're going to need them. Sunday, September 20, 2 a.m. You're jerked awake, but not by the usual suspects. Not your roommate's snoring that sounds like someone strangling a goose. Not the rats having their nightly Olympics in your walls. Not even the baby 3 houses down who cries on a schedule more reliable than the postal service. No, this time it's your nose that wakes you. Smoke. But wait, you think groggily, everything always smells like smoke. This is London. The air quality makes a coal mine look like a health spa. You've been breathing smoke since you were born. Your first words were probably "mama," followed by a cough. But this smoke is different. It's got an urgency to it, a thickness, like someone took all the regular smoke in London and decided to concentrate it into smoke syrup. Your eyes are watering. Your throat feels like you've been gargling with ash. Outside, you hear shouting. Again, not unusual. London after midnight is basically one long shouting match, interrupted by occasional sleeping. But these shouts have a different quality. Less "you stole my ale" and more "oh God, we're all going to die." You stumble to your window, which is really just a hole in the wall with shutters that don't quite close. The night sky should be dark, maybe with a few stars if the coal smoke isn't too thick. Instead, there's an orange glow to the east, not sunrise orange. This is aggressive orange, angry orange. The kind of orange that suggests something has gone very, very wrong with someone's evening plans. "Fire!" someone screams in the street below. "Thanks, Captain Obvious," you think. But then your sleep-addled brain catches up with current events. Fire in London, where everything is made of wood and wishes. Now, in 2024, when someone yells fire, you have a plan. Exit routes, meeting points, that little green running man sign that shows you where to go. In 1666, the emergency plan is essentially good luck with that. There's no fire department coming to save you. The London Fire Brigade won't exist for another 200 years. Right now, firefighting consists of your neighbours showing up with buckets and opinions. You throw on your clothes, which takes approximately 3 seconds because you only own one outfit, and you probably slept in most of it anyway. Shoes? Also your only pair. They're leather if you're middle class, wood, and hope if you're not. You grab your most valuable possessions, which might be a few coins, a pewter spoon, and if you're really fancy, that book you can't actually read but looks impressive. Your mental inventory of grabbable items is depressingly short. This isn't like evacuating a modern home where you're agonizing over photo albums and electronics. Your worldly possessions fit in a sack. A small sack. Your wealth is in your trade tools if you're a craftsman, your inventory if you're a merchant, or absolutely nothing if you're one of London's thousands of labourers who own exactly what they're wearing, plus maybe a spare shirt. Down the narrow stairs you go, trying not to trip in the dark because candles and running don't mix well, and you don't want to start your own fire. The stairs creak and groan like they're personally offended by your urgency. In the darkness, you bash your shin on something that wasn't there yesterday, or was it? Navigation in a 17th century house at night is like playing a very painful game of blind man's bluff. Your neighbours are already in the street, milling around like confused sheep who smell wolf but can't see it yet. Everyone's asking the same questions. Where's the fire? How big is it? Should we go back to bed? That last one might sound stupid to you, but remember, fires happen all the time in London. Usually, they burn a house or two, maybe a shop, then peter out when they hit a brick building or run out of fuel. The city's burned before, small sections here and there, and life always goes on. Why should tonight be different? Mrs. Wiggins from 2 doors down is standing in her night shift, which would be scandalous if anyone cared about scandal right now. She's clutching a chicken like it's her firstborn child. The chicken seems surprisingly calm about the whole situation, which is more than you can say for Mr. Wiggins, who's running around in circles shouting contradictory orders to no one in particular. Young Tom, the apprentice from the cobbler's shop, is trying to organise a bucket brigade. Bless his optimistic heart. He's managed to find 3 buckets and 1 cooking pot. For a fire that's already consuming multiple buildings, it's like trying to fight a dragon with a butter knife, but at least he's trying. The parish constable shows up, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. He's about 70 years old, carries a staff he can barely lift, and his main qualification for the job is that he survived to 70 in London, which honestly is impressive enough. He starts shouting orders that nobody listens to, because everybody knows he has about as much authority as that chicken Mrs. Wiggins is holding. You push through the growing crowd to get a better look at the fire. The smell hits you first, not just wood smoke, but the acrid stench of burning tar, the sweet sick smell of burning grain, and something else, something chemical and wrong. That's when you remember. Pudding Lane isn't just bakeries, it's warehouses. Warehouses full of coal, hemp, oil, spirits, and oh god, pitch and tar for the shipyards. The fire isn't just burning buildings. It's found London's supply closet of flammable goods and decided to throw a party. Someone mentions the Lord Mayor should be told. Someone else says he has been told and went back to bed. This causes a brief argument about whether the Lord Mayor is an idiot or just impressively optimistic. The consensus seems to be both. The church bells are starting their backward peal now, the alarm bells. St. Margaret's first, then All Hallows, then more and more until it sounds like every church in London is screaming in bronze. The sound is eerie, wrong, like playing a song backwards. It makes your skin crawl in a way that has nothing to do with the approaching fire. More people are pouring into the streets now, some fully dressed, some in various states of undress that would be hilarious if the situation weren't so dire. One gentleman emerges from his house in a full periwig, but no breeches, apparently having prioritised his hairpiece over his dignity. Another man is trying to save his possessions by throwing them out of his window, which would be fine, except he's throwing them directly into the path of the fire. The smell of smoke is getting stronger. The orange glow is getting brighter. And now, if you listen carefully over the shouting and the bells and the general chaos, you can hear the fire itself. It's a sound like nothing you've ever heard. A roaring, crackling, breathing sound. Like some massive beast waking up hungry. A few entrepreneurial souls are already trying to capitalize on the chaos. Cart owners are offering to transport goods for increasingly outrageous prices. One man wants a week's wages to carry a single chest to safety. Another is charging by the item. Your mother's portrait? That'll be 6pence. Your silver plate? A shilling. Your daughter? Well, she can walk, can't she? The first explosion happens just as you're debating whether to go back for that other shirt. It's not a huge explosion, just someone's private store of gunpowder going up, but in the narrow streets it sounds like the crack of doom. Windows rattle, people scream. That chicken, Mrs. Wiggins is holding finally realises something's wrong and starts a one-bird riot. This is the moment when concerned tips over into panic, because fire is one thing. Fire that explodes is something else entirely. How much gunpowder is stored in these houses? How much oil? How much spirits? Nobody knows exactly, but everyone knows it's too much. The crowd dynamic changes instantly. What was a concerned gathering becomes a mob. People stop asking questions and start moving. The problem is, they're all moving in different directions. Some toward the river, some toward the gates, some toward churches. Because surely God will protect his houses, right? You're caught in the human tide, pushed and pulled by people who have no more idea what they're doing than you do. Someone steps on your foot. Someone else elbows you in the ribs. A woman shrieks that her baby is missing, then finds it in her arms where it's been all along. The panic is making people stupid, and stupid people in large groups are dangerous. The fire is moving faster than anyone expected. How is that possible? Fire moves at fire speed, which should be slow, manageable, fightable. But this fire seems to have found London's fast-forward button. Later, you'll learn about convection and wind patterns and how fires create their own weather systems. Right now, all you know is that the street you were planning to escape down is suddenly full of flames. The heat hits you like a physical force, not the gentle warmth of a hearth fire or even the blast from a baker's oven. This is heat that makes your exposed skin tight and painful, heat that dries your eyes until blinking hurts, heat that makes breathing feel like swallowing sand, and you're still streets away from the actual flames. A merchant's house collapses with a sound like thunder. Sparks and burning debris shoot into the night sky like hell's own fireworks. Some of those sparks land on the thatched roof of a house 3 streets over. Within minutes, that house is burning too. The fire isn't just spreading, It's multiplying, jumping from building to building, like some awful game of tag, where everyone who's tagged bursts into flames. The bucket brigade that young Tom organised has given up. The 3 buckets and cooking pot are abandoned in the street. The water they managed to throw might as well have been spit for all the good it did. Tom himself is nowhere to be seen, probably smart enough to realise that optimism has its limits, and those limits are considerably shorter than the reach of this fire. You need to make a decision. Stay and try to save your possessions, your home, your neighbourhood, or run and save the only thing that really matters, your life. Around you, people are making different choices. Some are forming human chains to pass goods out of houses. Others are already fleeing with whatever they can carry. A few particularly brave or stupid souls are actually heading toward the fire, probably to try to save their shops or homes. You won't see most of them again. The widow Harrison from the corner house is sitting in the street, surrounded by her possessions, weeping. Her husband built that house 40 years ago. Her children were born there. Her whole life is in those walls, and now those walls are going to burn. Someone tries to convince her to leave. She won't budge. "Where would I go?" she asks, and nobody has an answer because nobody knows where any of them are going. The fire has its own voice now, a roaring, rushing sound, like a waterfall made of flame. Glass windows are exploding from the heat, adding a percussion section to Hell's symphony. The smoke is so thick you can barely see across the street, which is probably merciful because what you'd see wouldn't help your peace of mind. A new problem emerges: the firefighters. Not professional firefighters, because those don't exist, but the enthusiastic amateurs who've decided they're going to save London with muscle and determination. They're pulling down houses to create fire breaks, which is the right idea executed in the worst possible way. First, they're arguing about which houses to pull down. The owners, unsurprisingly, object to having their homes demolished on the chance the fire might reach them. By the time they finish arguing, the fire has already arrived, and now they're trying to demolish buildings that are actively burning, which is about as safe and effective as it sounds. Second, they're not very good at demolition. Pulling down a house properly requires skill, tools, and coordination. These people have enthusiasm and hooks on long poles. They're as likely to pull a burning beam onto themselves as they are to create a useful firebreak. One group manages to collapse a house directly into the street, blocking the exact escape route everyone was planning to use. The social order is breaking down faster than the buildings. Rich merchants are suddenly on equal footing with paupers. Fire doesn't check your bank balance. That gentleman with the periwig and no breeches? He's worth £1,000, not that it matters now. The beggar from the bridge? He's got the same chance of survival as anyone else, maybe better because he's not weighed down by possessions. You finally decide it's time to go, but go where? The river is to the south, but so is the fire. The city gates are in every direction, but they're narrow, and when dawn comes, they'll be choked with people trying to leave. The fields outside London seem safest, but that means abandoning everything you own to the flames. And in 1666, everything you own is literally everything you have. There's no insurance, no disaster relief, no government assistance. If your house burns, you're starting over with nothing but the clothes on your back. As you stand there paralysed by indecision, a burning timber crashes into the street not 10 feet from where you're standing. The message is clear: move or burn. The fire has made your decision for you. It's time to run. It's time to run. But running in 1666 London is like trying to sprint through a maze made of matchsticks while blindfolded and on fire. Which, coincidentally, is about to become a very real possibility. You join the stream of humanity flowing through the streets, though flowing is generous. It's more like oozing, like honey, panicked, screaming honey that occasionally explodes. The streets that were narrow on a good day are now packed with people, carts, animals, and abandoned possessions. It's the world's worst obstacle course, and the penalty for failure is combustion. Everyone has the same idea. Get to the gates, get out of the city, live to complain about it later. The problem is there are only 8 gates in the old city walls, and they're designed to control traffic, not evacuate 400. 0 people who've suddenly realised they're living in a giant bonfire. You're heading for Ludgate, mainly because it's away from the fire, and you vaguely remember it exists. The crowd carries you along like a river of elbows and sweat. A man next to you is clutching a portrait of someone who might be his wife, or might be Queen Elizabeth I, in the smoke and chaos. It's hard to tell. A woman is dragging a chest that probably weighs more than she does. A child is carrying a cat that clearly doesn't want to be carried and is expressing its displeasure with claws. The smoke is getting thicker. Not just wood smoke now, but the black, oily smoke of burning tar, the acrid smoke of burning cloth, the chemical smoke of God knows what else London has been storing in its basements. Your eyes are streaming. Your throat feels like you've been gargling broken glass. Every breath is a struggle between your need for air and your lungs' very reasonable desire not to be filled with poison. Someone shouts that the fire has reached Thames Street. This is catastrophic news. Thames Street is where London keeps its really flammable stuff. The warehouses full of oil, spirits, tallow, hemp, and everything else that burns enthusiastically. If the fire reaches those, well, it has reached those. The explosions start almost immediately. They're not massive explosions, not yet. Just the pop 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 of spirits casks bursting, the whoosh of oil barrels igniting, the crack of resin stores going up. But in the narrow streets, confined by buildings on all sides, even small explosions sound enormous. Each one sends a fresh wave of panic through the crowd. A cart overturns ahead of you, spilling its load of furniture into the street. The owner tries to reload it, blocking everyone behind him. The crowd surges, pushing, shoving. Someone falls. In normal times, people would help them up. These are not normal times. The fallen person disappears under the flow of feet. You try not to think about it. You definitely try not to think about how easily that could be you. The heat is following you. That's the terrifying part. You're moving away from the fire, but the heat keeps getting worse. It's radiating through the buildings, conducting through the ground, carried on the wind that's still blowing strongly from the east. The fire isn't just chasing you, it's surrounding you, cutting off escape routes you didn't even know you needed. A new horror, the animals. Every house has animals. Horses, cows, pigs, chickens, dogs, cats. Now they're all in the streets, adding their panic to the human panic. A horse, maddened by fear and smoke, plunges through the crowd, scattering people like bowling pins. A pig, somehow on fire, runs squealing past, which is exactly as horrifying as it sounds. Dogs howl. Cats disappear into whatever crevices they can find. The chickens. Well, the chickens are having the worst day of their already pretty terrible lives. You pass a church where people have gathered, thinking stone walls mean safety. They're wrong. Churches burn too, especially when they're full of wooden pews, wooden screens, wooden everything except the walls. Plus, everyone who's taken shelter there has brought their most flammable possessions with them. It's not a sanctuary, it's a fire trap with a steeple. The priest is trying to maintain order, leading prayers. promising that God will protect the faithful. The faithful seem to have their doubts, especially when burning debris starts falling from the sky like hell's own rain. One particularly large ember lands on the church roof. Within minutes, smoke is pouring from under the tiles. The sanctuary becomes a stampede for the doors. You keep moving. What else can you do? The crowd is thinning a bit as people peel off down side streets, looking for their own escape routes. This would be helpful, except those side streets keep turning into dead ends when the fire jumps ahead. You watch one group confidently turn down an alley, only to come running back moments later, chased by smoke and the orange glow of flames. The social fabric of London is unravelling faster than a cheap shirt. That veneer of civilization, of law and order and proper behaviour, gone. A well-dressed merchant shoves an old woman out of his way. A gentleman throws coins into the crowd just to cause a distraction so he can get through. A mother with children begs for help carrying them, and people walk past like she's invisible. But there are moments of humanity too. A young man helps an elderly couple with their bundles. A woman shares her water jug with strangers. A group of apprentices forms a protective circle around a pregnant woman. Disaster brings out the worst in people, but sometimes, just sometimes, it brings out the best too. You reach a wider street and can finally see more than 10 feet ahead. What you see doesn't improve your mood. The fire isn't just behind you now. It's to your left, ahead of you, creeping around to your right. It's not moving in a line like fire is supposed to. It's jumping, sprouting, multiplying like some kind of flame virus. Those burning embers falling from the sky, each one is a potential new fire. They're landing on thatched roofs, in piles of garbage, on abandoned carts full of who knows what. The fire is playing checkers, while everyone else is still trying to figure out the rules. A house that was fine 5 minutes ago is suddenly belching smoke. A street that was clear is now impassable. The noise is incredible. Not just the roar of the fire itself, but the crash of falling timbers, the explosion of heated glass, the crack of stone splitting from thermal shock, the crash of collapsing buildings. And over it all, the human sounds, screaming, crying, praying, cursing, the general cacophony of a city in its death throes. Someone has the bright idea to head for the river. "We can get on boats," they shout. "Escape by water." This sounds logical until you remember that everyone else in London has the same idea. The Thames is about to become the world's most crowded river, and there aren't nearly enough boats for everyone who wants one. But the crowd is moving that way, and fighting against the crowd is like fighting the tide, so you let yourself be carried along. Down toward the river you go, through streets you don't recognize because the familiar landmarks are either on fire or obscured by smoke. Is that burning building the haberdashery where you bought your hat? Was that pile of flaming rubble once the tavern where you drank after work? The fire is erasing London's geography as thoroughly as it's erasing its architecture. You stumble over something soft. You don't look down. You can't look down. Looking down would mean acknowledging what's happening to people who moved too slowly, who fell and couldn't get up, who made the wrong choice about which way to run. You keep your eyes up and keep moving. The rich are having their own special crisis. You pass a mansion where servants are still trying to save their master's possessions, loading paintings and furniture onto carts, while the house next door burns merrily. The master is screaming at them to work faster, apparently not noticing that the fire has already jumped to his roof. His priorities are about to get a violent readjustment. A group of men are trying to organise a stand against the fire. They've got hooks, ropes, and buckets. They're going to create a fire break, by God, and save their street. You want to tell them it's hopeless, that the fire is already past them, already surrounding them, but they wouldn't listen anyway. People need hope, even false hope, especially false hope. The smoke is so thick now that you're navigating more by sound and touch than sight. You keep one hand on the wall to your right, figuring as long as there's a wall, you're still on a street and not wandering into the flames. The wall is hot, not warm, hot. Hot enough to hurt. Hot enough to tell you that whatever's on the other side is probably already gone. A child is crying somewhere in the smoke, lost, probably, separated from parents in the chaos. You want to help, but you can't see them, can't find them, can barely find yourself. The crying gets fainter, moving away, swallowed by the roar of the fire. Another ghost for London's conscience. If London survives to have a conscience, you trip over debris, timber, masonry, someone's abandoned possessions, who knows? Your hands hit the ground hard, and the ground is hot too. The very earth is heating up, conducting the fire's warmth through stone and dirt and whatever else London streets are made of. It's like standing on a giant griddle that's slowly coming up to temperature. Time has become meaningless. Has it been an hour since you woke? 2 hours? 10 minutes? The fire has created its own temporal zone where everything happens too fast and too slow simultaneously. Your escape feels like it's taking forever, but the fire's advance is horrifyingly quick. Finally, through the smoke, you see the river. The beautiful, wet, non-flammable Thames. Salvation. Except everyone else has had the same idea. The riverbank is packed with people, goods, animals, and desperation. The watermen, who normally charge a penny to ferry people across, are now charging whatever they think people will pay. A shilling, a pound, your firstborn child. The free market has spoken, and it's speaking in the language of extortion. The boats are overloaded, dangerously overloaded. You watch one tip spilling its passengers into the Thames. They thrash in the water, weighed down by their clothes, by the possessions they refuse to abandon. Some make it to shore, some don't. The Thames doesn't care. It's been swallowing Londoners for centuries. A few more won't make a difference. You could try for a boat, compete with hundreds of others for the few spaces available. You could try swimming, though the Thames in 1666 is less a river and more a flowing sewer. You could follow the riverbank, hoping to outpace the fire along the water's edge. Or you could keep heading for the gates, hoping they're still passable, hoping the fire hasn't already cut them off. Every choice feels wrong. Every direction leads to danger. The fire has turned London into a giant trap, and you're just another rat looking for a way out. But you have to choose something. Standing still means death. The fire is patient, but not that patient. Around you, people are making their own impossible choices. Some are giving up, sitting down in the street with their possessions, waiting for whatever comes. Some are turning back, heading into the fire to save something or someone they left behind. Some are praying, some are looting. Some have gone mad from the smoke and the heat and the horror, laughing at nothing, talking to people who aren't there. London is dying. You can feel it in the heat, smell it in the smoke, hear it in the crash of falling buildings. The city that survived the Romans, the Saxons, the Vikings, the Normans, plague and war and time itself, is being erased by fire in a matter of hours. And you're trapped in the middle of it, just another anonymous victim of history's most spectacular urban disaster. The question isn't whether you'll survive. That's looking increasingly unlikely. The question is how long you can keep running before the fire catches up, because it will catch up. It's catching up to everyone. The only variables are when and where. You make your choice. It doesn't matter what it is: boat, gate, following the river, hiding in a church. Every choice leads to the same place. More running, more fear, more desperate hope that somewhere in this burning city there's still a way out. But deep down, in the part of your mind that's still capable of rational thought, you know the truth. The fire is faster than you, stronger than you, hungrier than you, and it's not going to stop until it's eaten everything London has to offer, including you. Monday morning, September 3rd. You've survived the night, which puts you ahead of a depressing number of your fellow Londoners. You're currently huddled with about 100 other refugees in Moorfields, just outside the city walls. You made it out through Moorgate sometime around dawn, after spending the night playing the world's worst game of The Floor is Lava, except the floor actually was lava, or at least hot enough to melt your shoe leather. From your position in the fields, you can see London burning. Really see it, not just the smoke and glow, but the actual city transforming into a massive bonfire. It's almost beautiful, in the way that catastrophes can be beautiful when you're not actively running from them. The smoke pillar rises thousands of feet into the air, visible from dozens of miles away. Later, people in Oxford will report seeing the glow. That's Oxford, 50 miles away. Your city is burning so enthusiastically, it's visible from another city. Around you, Moorfields is turning into the world's most depressing camping trip. Thousands of people with whatever they manage to save, which for most is practically nothing. Furniture, chests, random possessions scattered everywhere. Children crying, adults crying. That chicken Mrs. Wiggins saved is here somewhere, probably wondering what all the fuss is about. The social hierarchy has completely collapsed. That merchant who was charging extortionate rates for cart rides, he's sitting in the mud next to a beggar, both equally homeless. The lady who wouldn't be seen dead talking to commoners is now sharing her last bit of bread with a chimney sweep's family. Disaster, it turns out, is a great equalizer. But here's the thing about the fire that nobody expected. It's not done. Everyone assumed it would burn itself out overnight. Hit the river, run out of fuel, meet a nice wide street it couldn't jump. Something, anything. Instead, it's gotten bigger, angrier. It's eaten all of Thames Street with its warehouses of combustibles and used them as an appetizer. Now it's heading for the main course, the heart of London. Word spreads through the refugee camp like wildfire. The fire has jumped the Fleet River. It's heading for Cheapside. It's approaching St. Paul's Cathedral. St. Paul's? The massive Gothic cathedral that's dominated London's skyline for centuries. Surely that won't burn. It's made of stone. It's sacred. It's full of wooden scaffolding because it's being renovated, and the crypt is packed with books from local printers who thought a stone cathedral would be the safest place to store their inventory. This is when King Charles II finally decides maybe he should do something about his capital city cosplaying as the surface of the sun. He's been getting reports at Whitehall, but reports are just words on paper. Now he can see the smoke from his palace windows. Now he can smell it. Now it's real. The king arrives on the scene like a 17th century action hero. If action heroes wore elaborate wigs and travelled with an entourage of equally bewigged courtiers, he's genuinely shocked by what he sees. This isn't the small fire the Lord Mayor described. This is apocalyptic. This is the kind of disaster that ends, reigns, and topples kingdoms. Charles, to his credit, immediately takes charge. He overrides the useless Lord Mayor, who's been wandering around like a lost sheep, bleating, "Lord, what can I do? I am spent." He organises firefighting efforts. He puts his brother James, the Duke of York, in charge of operations. He offers money, real money, not promises, to anyone who helps fight the fire. But here's the problem with royal intervention. It's Monday. The fire started early Sunday morning. That's more than 24 hours of uncontrolled burning. 24 hours of the fire establishing itself, spreading its wings, getting comfortable. It's like trying to uninvite a guest who's already eaten half your food and set up camp in your living room. The king orders the creation of fire breaks. Not the half-hearted, maybe we should pull down a house or two, fire breaks that people have been attempting, but serious, massive fire breaks. Whole streets to be demolished. The Duke of York is given command of the fire posts, with guards to ensure orders are followed. This sounds great in theory. In practice, the fire is now so hot that getting close enough to demolish buildings is nearly impossible. The men tasked with creating fire breaks have to work in shifts of minutes, not hours. The heat blisters, exposed skin from dozens of yards away. Tools become too hot to hold. The firefighters need firefighters. Plus, there's still the problem of property rights. Even with the king saying, tear it down, owners resist. That's their life savings in those walls, their inheritance, their future. One merchant famously threatens to sue anyone who touches his warehouse. Even as the building next door burns, he's still threatening legal action when his own roof catches fire. Lawyers, it seems, have always been optimists. The king himself gets personally involved, which in any other situation would be inspiring. Charles II on the fire lines, passing buckets, encouraging the firefighters. Except the king passing buckets is like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. The symbolic value is high. The practical value is essentially zero. What the fire needs is not royal bucket brigades, but rain, or a change in the wind, or for London to suddenly be made of stone instead of wood. What it gets is more wind, still from the east, still strong, still pushing the fire deeper into the city. Mother Nature, it seems, has chosen a side, and it's not London's. Back in Moorfields, you're watching this royal drama unfold while dealing with your own problems. Like food. When you fled your home in the middle of the night, grabbing a week's worth of provisions wasn't high on your priority list. Now you're discovering that thousands of hungry refugees in a field with no supplies is a recipe for trouble. Some enterprising souls from the surrounding villages have shown up with cartloads of bread and beer to sell. At prices that would make a loan shark blush. A loaf that cost a penny on Saturday now costs a shilling. Beer that was basically free is now liquid gold. The law of supply and demand has never been illustrated more starkly. The refugees are organising themselves into camps by parish, trying to maintain some sense of community. St Giles over here, St Martin's over there. Except half the parishes don't exist anymore, except as smoking rubble. So the organisation is more theoretical than practical. Still, humans need structure, even when their world is literally collapsing. Children, being children, have already adapted to the situation. They're playing in the fields, turning disaster into adventure. I'm the fire, one shouts, chasing others. I'm the king, another declares, organising a bucket brigade of imagination. Their resilience is both heartwarming and heartbreaking. They don't understand yet that their homes are gone, their futures uncertain, their world forever changed. The stories coming out of the city get worse by the hour. The Guildhall is threatened. Cheapside is burning. The Royal Exchange, the heart of London's commerce, is in danger. Each landmark that falls is like watching your memories burn. That's where you bought your first pair of good shoes. That's where you met your spouse. That's where you got drunk celebrating your apprenticeship completion, all becoming ash. Then comes the news that seems impossible. St. Paul's is burning. St. Paul's Cathedral, the ancient heart of London, the building that survived everything history could throw at it, is on fire. The wooden scaffolding catches first, then the roof beams, then the whole massive structure becomes a vertical inferno. The lead roof melts and pours down like silver rain. The stones explode from the heat. The tombs in the crypt, packed with those safely stored books, become crematoriums. Watching St. Paul's burn is like watching God turn his back on London. If the cathedral isn't safe, nothing is safe. If stone burns, what hope does flesh have? The psychological blow is almost worse than the physical destruction. London isn't just burning, it's being erased. The king orders gunpowder to be used to create fire breaks. This is desperate stuff, fighting fire with explosives. The idea is to blow up houses in the fire's path faster than the owners can object. It works, sort of. The explosions do clear spaces. They also shower burning debris over a wider area, starting new fires. Sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. The Navy is brought in, because when your city is burning, why not add sailors to the mix? They bring discipline, organisation, and more importantly, experience with fire at sea where it's fight or sink. They're more ruthless about demolition, more efficient about organisation. They also bring gunpowder from the naval stores, which is like bringing gasoline to put out a fire, but desperate times and all that. Tuesday now, the fire has been burning for 3 days. 3 days of continuous, expanding, consuming flame. The statistics are starting to come in, though nobody's really counting carefully. 13,000 houses gone. 87 churches. The Guildhall. The Royal Exchange. Customs House. Prisons. The prisoners were evacuated, mostly. 44 company halls. The entire medieval city within the walls is essentially gone. But you're alive. Hungry, homeless, exhausted, traumatized, but alive. In Moorfields, life goes on because what else can it do? Babies are being born in the refugee camps. People are getting married, might as well, since all the paperwork burned anyway. The business of living continues even while the city dies. The king makes proclamations. Food will be provided. Surrounding towns must accept refugees. Rebuilding will happen. New regulations will prevent this from happening again. It all sounds very official and comforting. Of course, proclamations don't fill stomachs or replace homes, but it's nice that someone's thinking about the future. The fire finally starts to slow on Tuesday night. Not because of human effort, though everyone involved will claim credit. The wind finally drops. The fire runs into areas already burned, finding no fuel. It meets the fire breaks created at such terrible cost. It simply runs out of city to burn. By Wednesday morning, it's mostly over. Oh, there are still hotspots that will burn for months. Cellars full of coal that will smoulder until Christmas. But the great consuming beast is finally sated. It's eaten its fill of London and fallen into a satisfied slumber. You and thousands of others sit in fields outside the walls, looking at what's left of your city, which is to say, not much. The skyline you've known all your life is gone. Where there were steeples, now there's sky. Where there were landmarks, now there are stumps of blackened stone. The city looks like a giant mouth with all its teeth knocked out. The king tours the destruction, promising to rebuild. A new London, he says, better than before. Brick, not wood. Wide streets, not narrow alleys. Proper firefighting equipment. Building regulations. All the things that should have existed before, but didn't, because London, like most cities, preferred to learn its lessons the hard way. You're not thinking about the future London. You're thinking about breakfast, about where you'll sleep tonight, about whether your employer's business survived, and if you still have a job, about whether that cousin in the countryside you haven't spoken to in 5 years will take you in, about starting over with nothing but the clothes on your back and the memory of 4 days when the world caught fire. The Great Fire of London is over. The great struggle to survive after the Great Fire of London has just begun. And honestly, you're not sure which is worse. Wednesday, September 5th. The fire is officially out, which is like saying a tornado is done while you're standing in the wreckage of your house. Sure, the active destruction has stopped, but that doesn't make the situation any less catastrophic. You've managed to sneak back into the city, if you can still call it a city. What greets you is a landscape from nightmares. Imagine someone took London, put it in an oven at cremation temperature for 4 days, then let it cool. That's what you're walking through. The ground is still hot. Not warm, hot. Hot enough that your shoes, already damaged from your escape, start to smell like burning leather. Again, the air shimmers with residual heat, making everything look like a desert mirage. Except, instead of seeing water that isn't there, you're seeing buildings that aren't there anymore. The smell is indescribable. It's not just smoke now, it's the smell of an entire city's worth of life, reduced to carbon. Burned wood, yes, but also burned cloth, burned food, burned leather, burned everything. Under it all is another smell, one nobody talks about, but everyone notices, of the smell of the pets and livestock that didn't make it out. The city's cats, dogs, horses, pigs, all the animals that were too panicked to save or too trapped to escape. Navigation is nearly impossible. Remember how you used to find your way around? Turn left at the sign of the Bull, right at St Mary's Church, straight on past the Woolmonger's Hall? None of that exists anymore. The sign of the Bull is a pile of ash. St Mary's is a collection of blackened stones. The Woolmonger's Hall is a smouldering crater. You're lost in your own city, a stranger in a place you've lived your whole life. The landmarks that survived are almost worse than the ones that didn't. A single wall standing where a house used to be, like a tombstone for someone's life. A chimney rising from nothing, pointing at the sky like an accusatory finger. Church towers still standing but hollow, their bells melted into puddles of bronze at the base. They look like giant candles that burned down to stumps. Other survivors are wandering through the ruins too, ghost-like figures covered in ash and soot. Some are looking for their homes, though good luck identifying which pile of rubble used to be yours. Some are looking for cached valuables, hoping their buried coins or hidden plate survived. Most are just looking, unable to process what they're seeing. You find what you think was your street. Think, because without buildings, one burnt stretch looks much like another. But there's a distinctive iron gate, warped by heat, but still recognizable. This was home. That pile of rubble there, that was where you lived. That indentation in the ground, that was your cellar. That twisted piece of metal, that might have been your cooking pot. Your entire life reduced to archaeological fragments. Some people are already sifting through the ashes. They've got rakes and poles, turning over the debris, looking for anything salvageable. Occasionally, someone lets out a cry of triumph, a coin that survived, a piece of plate barely melted, a tool that might still be usable. But mostly they find nothing. Fire is thorough. 4 days of fire is very, very thorough. The stones themselves tell the story of the heat. Limestone has turned to powder. Sandstone has cracked and split. The iron bars on windows have twisted into modern art sculptures. Lead from roofs and windows has melted and pooled in fantastic shapes. In some places, the heat was so intense it vitrified the sand in the mortar, turning walls into grotesque glass sculptures. But humans are nothing if not resilient, or perhaps stubborn is a better word. Already, some people are making plans. That merchant who threatened to sue anyone who touched his warehouse, he survived, and he's already talking about rebuilding, bigger, better, fireproof. The eternal optimism of commerce in the face of absolute destruction. Of course, before anyone can rebuild, someone needs to be blamed. This is London, after all. Disasters don't just happen. Someone must be responsible. The blame game starts almost immediately, and it's as ugly as you'd expect. First suspect, the Catholics. Because when in doubt in 17th century England, blame the Catholics. Never mind that Catholics lost their homes and churches too. Never mind that fire doesn't check your religious affiliation before burning your house. The rumours start flying. It was a papist plot. The Pope ordered it. Catholic agents started the fire to destroy Protestant London. Second suspect, the Dutch. England is at war with the Netherlands, so obviously the Dutch sent secret agents to burn London. The fact that this would be the most inefficient military strategy ever devised doesn't matter. People want someone to blame, and foreign enemies are always popular choices. Third suspect, the French. Because why should the Dutch have all the blame? The French are Catholic and foreign, a double threat. Stories spread of French agents seen throwing fireballs, of suspicious foreigners near Pudding Lane before the fire started. Every person with an accent becomes suspect. The paranoia reaches peak stupidity when a simple-minded French watchmaker named Robert Hubert confesses to starting the fire. He claims he was paid to do it, part of a grand conspiracy. The fact that he wasn't even in London when the fire started doesn't matter. The fact that his story changes every time he tells it doesn't matter. London needs someone to hang, and Hubert volunteers for the role. They hang him at Tyburn, of course. The crowd cheers. Justice is served. Except everyone with half a brain knows Hubert is innocent. Just a confused man who confessed to something he didn't do for reasons that died with him. But London needed its sacrifice, and Hubert provided it. The real culprit, everyone knows but won't admit, is London itself. A city built of wood and wishes, packed too tight, with no fire safety, no building codes, no planning. The fire didn't need a conspiracy, it just needed a spark and favourable conditions, both of which London provided in abundance. Back in the ruins, life finds a way to continue. Temporary shelters spring up in the rubble. Some are official, the king has ordered tents and supplies distributed. Some are unofficial, people throwing up lean-tos against standing walls, creating homes from debris and determination. The city looks like a massive refugee camp, which is essentially what it is. Markets reform in the strangest places. Someone sets up a stall selling food in what used to be a church nave, using the altar stone as a counter. Another entrepreneur is selling salvaged nails and ironwork. The fire created a recycling economy before recycling was invented. Water sellers do booming business since most of the wells are clogged with debris. The authorities try to maintain order, but what authority remains when the courts have burned, the prisons have burned, the very symbols of law and order have burned? Soldiers patrol, but they're patrolling ruins. Magistrates hold court, but where? Under what authority? The fire didn't just destroy buildings, it destroyed the entire administrative structure of the city. Crime, predictably, flourishes. Not the organised crime of later centuries, but the desperate crime of people with nothing left to lose. Looting, though what's left to loot. Theft, though what's left to steal. Mostly it's fights over salvage rights, disputes over who owns which pile of rubble, arguments that sometimes turn violent because when you've lost everything, even a bent nail becomes worth fighting for. But there's kindness too. More than you'd expect. People sharing what little they have. Strangers helping strangers. Communities forming from nothing but shared catastrophe. That baker from your street who you barely spoke to before? Now you're sharing a tent and your last piece of bread. That wealthy merchant who wouldn't acknowledge your existence? Now you're teaching him how to build a shelter from rubble. The children adapt fastest, as children do. Within days they've turned the ruins into the world's largest playground. They're playing king of the hill on rubble piles, hide and seek in burnt-out buildings, tag through the twisted streets. Their laughter echoes strangely in the devastation, both heartening and somehow wrong, like flowers growing in a graveyard. News from the outside world filters in. The fire was visible from Oxford, Windsor, the countryside for miles around. Ships at sea reported seeing the glow. The smoke plume was visible from the continent. London's destruction has become international news, in an age when international news travels at the speed of a sailing ship. Foreign ambassadors tour the ruins and send reports home. The French ambassador writes that London looks like Troy after the Greeks finished with it. The Venetian ambassador compares it to Pompeii. Everyone has a classical illusion, as if comparing London to ancient disasters somehow makes the current one more bearable. The king continues his proclamations. London will be rebuilt in brick and stone. Streets will be widened. Building regulations will be enforced. Sir Christopher Wren and other architects present grand plans for a new London, with wide boulevards, piazzas, and all the urban planning that should have existed before, but didn't. Of course, grand plans cost grand money, and who's paying? The crown is broke from fighting the Dutch. The city is broke from being on fire. Individual landowners are broke from losing everything. The beautiful plans for New London meet the ugly reality of economics and are quietly shelved. London will rebuild, but it will rebuild itself organically, messily, practically. You're not thinking about grand architectural plans. You're thinking about tomorrow, about finding work when your workplace doesn't exist, about finding food when the markets have burned, about finding shelter as autumn approaches and winter looms behind it. The fire lasted 4 days. The recovery will last years. Standing in the ruins of your former life, you face a choice that thousands of others are facing. Stay and rebuild, or leave and start over somewhere else? London has been your world, but that world is gone. The city will rise again. Cities always do, but will you be here to see it? Some are already leaving, heading for the countryside, for other cities, for the colonies. America sounds appealing when your alternative is a tent in a rubble field. Others are digging in, literally, clearing sites, making plans, refusing to be driven from their city by mere catastrophe. You make your choice, whatever it is. London makes its choice too, to survive, to rebuild, to rise from the ashes like the phoenix on its coat of arms. It won't be easy. It won't be quick. It won't be the same city it was before. But it will be London, and for Londoners, that's enough. The Great Fire is over. The great rebuilding is about to begin. And somewhere in the ashes of the old city, the seeds of the new one are already taking root. 1 month later, October 1666. You're still alive, which honestly surprises you some mornings. You wake up in your makeshift shelter, a lean-to built against one of the few standing walls in what used to be your parish. and for a moment, you forget. Then you open your eyes and see sky, where there should be ceiling, and reality comes crashing back like a bucket of cold Thames water. London is trying to be a city again, trying hard, like a punch-drunk boxer getting up for round 12, not because he thinks he can win, but because lying down means admitting defeat. The ruins are still smoking in places. Seriously. Cellars full of coal and oil continue to smoulder, sending up little pillars of smoke like the city is still breathing, still alive, just barely. The tent cities have evolved into something more permanent. Well, permanent, as in they might last through winter, not permanent as in actual buildings. Moorfields looks like the world's most depressing festival. All canvas and mud, and people trying to remember what normal life felt like. Children born after the fire will grow up thinking this is what cities look like. Temporary, fragile, ready to disappear at any moment. But here's the thing about humans. We're stupidly resilient. Already, people are clearing plots, laying foundations, making plans. Not the grand architectural plans of Wren and his colleagues. Those are gathering dust in some government office. No, these are the plans of ordinary people who just want a roof over their heads before winter arrives with its traditional gift of hypothermia. The first new buildings are going up, and they're exactly what you'd expect from people who just watched their city burn for 4 days. Paranoid, brick walls, tile roofs. No more artistic jettying, where upper floors lean out to gossip with their neighbours. No more picturesque thatch that burns at the slightest provocation. These new buildings are fortresses against fire, ugly and solid, and absolutely beautiful to anyone who remembers the alternative. Of course, building materials are in short supply and high demand, which means prices have gone through the roof that doesn't exist anymore. Bricks that cost pennies before the fire now cost shillings. Timber, and yes, people are still building with timber, because have you seen the price of bricks? Costs more than gold. Well, not literally, but it feels like it when you're trying to rebuild your life on the salary of someone whose workplace burned down. The King's grand proclamations about rebuilding in brick and stone meet the harsh reality of economics. Sure, brick is required for new buildings, but who's paying for it? The government offers loans, but loans need to be repaid. And with what? Your business is ash. Your tools are melted. Your customers are living in tents. It's hard to pay back a loan when your entire economic ecosystem has been cremated. So people improvise. They salvage bricks from the ruins, cleaning them one by one. They reuse timber that's only slightly charred. They build smaller, humbler, more realistic. The new London rising from the ashes isn't the golden phoenix of grand plans. It's more like a slightly singed pigeon, alive and functional, but not exactly majestic. The social fabric of the city is rewiring itself in interesting ways. Parish boundaries meant everything before the fire. They determined where you worshipped, where you drank, who you married, how you lived. Now, half the parishes are indistinguishable piles of rubble. People who would never have spoken before are now neighbours in the tent cities. Class distinctions haven't disappeared. This is still England, after all, but they've gotten fuzzy around the edges. That merchant who used to look down on you, he's borrowing your tools to clear his plot. That nobleman who wouldn't acknowledge your existence, he's asking your advice on temporary shelters because you've gotten quite good at building them. The fire has created a rough democracy of disaster where knowledge matters more than lineage, at least temporarily. The coffee houses are among the first businesses to reopen because London has its priorities straight. They set up in tents, in half-ruined buildings, wherever they can find space. Men gather to drink the bitter brew, and discuss the fire, the rebuilding, the future. Every man has a theory about how the fire started. Every man has a plan for preventing the next one. Every man is an expert on urban planning now that the urban has been unplanned by fire. Women, meanwhile, are doing the actual work of survival, setting up temporary homes, finding food, keeping families together, maintaining some semblance of normal life in deeply abnormal circumstances. While men debate architectural theories over coffee, women are figuring out how to cook without kitchens, wash without washhouses, and keep children clothed when all the clothing shops have burned. The children themselves are adapting with the terrifying flexibility of youth. 6 weeks ago, they played in streets. Now, they play in ruins. 6 weeks ago, they feared the dark. Now they live with parents who wake screaming from dreams of fire. They're growing up fast, these children of the ashes. In 20 years, they'll be the adults who remember the fire, who build with brick instead of wood, who keep buckets of water and sand handy just in case. Trade is slowly resuming, though slowly is generous. The Royal Exchange is gone, so merchants meet in coffee houses and taverns. The Guild Hall is a shell, so guild meetings happen in members' homes, if members still have homes. The markets have relocated to wherever there's space, a cleared plot here, a standing building there. Commerce, like life, finds a way. But it's different now. Credit is hard to come by when the documents proving you're creditworthy have burned. Contracts are difficult to enforce when the courts are operating out of tents. Trust becomes the currency of the realm, and trust is in short supply when everyone's desperate. Some trades are booming. Builders, obviously. Brickmakers can't keep up with demand. Carters charge whatever they want to transport materials. Anyone with construction skills is suddenly the most popular person in London. Other trades are dead. What use is a jeweller when nobody has money for jewels? What use is a dancing master when nobody has floors to dance on? The human stories emerging from the ashes are both heartbreaking and inspiring. The widow who lost everything but is teaching children their letters in exchange for food. The baker who set up a communal oven in the ruins, baking bread for entire neighbourhoods. The merchant who's using his last coins to employ men to clear rubble, not because he needs the land cleared, but because they need the work. But there are darker stories too. The landlords evicting tenants from the few standing buildings to charge higher rents to desperate refugees, the suppliers hoarding materials to drive prices up, the thieves pretending to be workmen to gain access to cleared plots. Disaster brings out the best in some people and the worst in others, and London has plenty of both. Winter is coming, and nobody's ready. How could they be? Winter in London is miserable in the best of times, cold, wet, dark, diseased. Winter in a tent after you've lost everything? That's not miserable, that's potentially lethal. The king orders churches in surrounding areas to take collections for the fire victims. Some money comes in, never enough, barely a drop in the ocean of need. People start making impossible choices. Stay in London and risk freezing? Leave for the countryside where you have no connections, no trade, no future. Indenture yourself or your children for the promise of food and shelter? Every option is bad. Every choice is wrong. But choosing nothing is worse. The stories of near misses and miraculous escapes have become legend already. The man who left his house to buy bread and returned to find his entire street on fire. The family who survived because their baby's crying woke them early. The drunk who passed out in a churchyard and woke to find himself surrounded by ashes but unharmed. Everyone has a story. Everyone's story is both unique and depressingly similar. The official death toll comes in remarkably low, single digits, allegedly. Nobody believes it. Nobody who saw the panic, the stampedes, the collapsing buildings, the inferno that consumed everything in its path. The official count doesn't include the poor, the vagrant, the undocumented. It doesn't count those who died later from injuries, smoke inhalation, or the diseases that flourish in refugee camps. The real death toll is unknowable, but certainly higher. The fire didn't keep careful records. Letters arrive from the countryside, from other cities, from abroad. Relatives checking if you're alive. Friends offering help. Business associates wondering if contracts still stand. Each letter is a lifeline to the world beyond the ashes. A reminder that London isn't all of England, that life continues elsewhere, even if it's paused here. Some Londoners are already leaving, accepting those offers of help, starting over in places that still have buildings and businesses and hope. They pack their few salvaged possessions and head for the city gates, not fleeing this time, but departing with dignity and purpose. Others watch them go with a mixture of envy and contempt. Envy because they have somewhere to go. Contempt because they're abandoning London in its hour of need. You're still here, still clearing rubble, still building temporary shelters that get a little less temporary each day, still waking each morning surprised to be alive. The city around you is a wound, raw and painful, but beginning to scab over. It will scar badly, it will never be the same, but it will heal after a fashion. Because that's what cities do. They endure, they adapt, they rise from their own ashes, not like phoenixes, that's too grand, too mythical, but like weeds. Stubborn, unglamorous, impossible to kill. London has survived Romans, Vikings, Normans, plagues, wars, and now fire. It will survive this too. The question isn't whether London will rebuild. The question is, what kind of London will emerge from the ashes, and whether you'll be there to see it. 5 years later, 1671. You're standing on London Bridge, one of the few structures that survived the fire, though barely. The bridge itself became a fire break, saving Southwark from joining the rest of London in ash. From here, you can see the new city rising from the bones of the old. It's different. Remember those grand plans? Those beautiful boulevards and piazzas that were going to make London the envy of Europe? Yeah, about that. Turns out, when you tell thousands of property owners to wait while architects draw pretty pictures, they get impatient. Turns out, when you need shelter now, you don't care much about urban planning theory. Turns out, London rebuilt itself the way it does everything, messily, stubbornly, practically. The new streets are wider. Not boulevard wide, but wide enough that two carts can pass without their drivers exchanging curses and fists. That's progress. The buildings are brick, mostly. Red brick, yellow brick, every shade of brick the kilns can produce. London looks less like a wooden medieval city and more like, well, like a city that learned fire hurts. But if you know where to look, you can still see the scars. Empty lots where nobody could afford to rebuild. Cellars that still smell of smoke on damp days. Church towers standing alone because the parish couldn't afford to rebuild the church. London wears its trauma like old clothes. Visible if you pay attention, ignored if you don't. You survived. That's the main thing. Not everyone did. Oh, not from the fire itself. We covered that fiction about the death toll, but from what came after. The winter of '66 took those who couldn't find shelter. Disease took those weakened by loss and stress. Despair took those who couldn't face starting over. The fire killed quickly. The aftermath killed slowly. But you're here. standing on a bridge that Shakespeare walked across, looking at a city Chaucer wouldn't recognize. You've got a new home now, smaller than before, but brick. You've got work. The rebuilding created jobs for everyone willing to swing a hammer or carry a hod. You've even got savings again, a few coins tucked away for the next disaster. Because there will be a next disaster. London taught you that. The coffee houses are proper buildings again, not tents with pretensions. Men still gather to discuss the fire, but now it's history, not news. I was on Cheapside when it reached the Guildhall, they say, like veterans comparing war wounds. Everyone's story has been polished by repetition, improved by time. Nobody ran in panic. Everyone was heroic. Memory is kind like that. St. Paul's is being rebuilt, not repaired. There wasn't enough left to repair. Built new from the ground up by that Christopher Wren fellow. It's going to have a dome, apparently. A big round dome, like they have in Rome. Some people think it's popish. Some people think it's magnificent. Most people just hope it won't burn this time. The new building regulations are interesting. Brick required, yes. Streets widened, somewhat. Fire equipment in every parish, theoretically. But London is still London. Rules are more like suggestions. Enforcement is more like hope. Already, people are finding ways around the regulations. That's not wood, officer. It's, very brown brick. That's not a thatch roof. It's decorative straw. Very fashionable. The fire court, set up to resolve property disputes after the fire, is still grinding through cases. Turns out, when you burn all the property records, figuring out who owns what becomes complicated. Was this your land or mine? Did that boundary run here or there? Without documents, it's all memory and argument. The lawyers are having a wonderful time. Nobody else is. Some things haven't changed. The Thames still stinks. The poor are still poor. The rich are still rich, though some of the names have changed. The fire was a great reshuffler of fortune. Some merchants who stored their wealth in their warehouses are now paupers. Some craftsmen who had nothing but their skills are now prosperous. Fire is democratic in its destruction, but random in its mercy. The foreigners blamed for the fire have mostly been forgotten. That poor French watchmaker who was hanged, nobody talks about him. Convenient scapegoats are useful during disasters, but embarrassing afterward. London has quietly decided the fire was an accident, which it was, and moved on to blaming people for current problems instead of past ones. Children who were babies during the fire are starting school now. They don't remember the old London, the wooden London, the London that burned. To them, cities are made of brick. Streets have width. Every parish has leather buckets and fire hooks. This is normal. You try to tell them about before, but how do you explain a city made of kindling to children who've only known stone? The anniversary of the fire passes each year with less fanfare. The first year, church services and remembrance. The second year, some sermons. By the fifth year, it's just another day for most people. London has a short memory for its own disasters, too busy surviving the present to dwell on the past. But at night, when the wind blows strong from the east, you still wake up sometimes. You still check the air for smoke. You still plan escape routes in your head. You still keep important things where you can grab them quickly. The fire may be history, but your body remembers. Your body will always remember. You've started a family since the fire. Children who know you as a survivor, a rebuilder, someone who was there. They ask for the story sometimes, and you tell them the sanitized version. The version where you were brave and calm. The version where you knew what to do. Not the version where you ran through the streets in blind panic. Not the version where you nearly died 5 times. Children don't need those nightmares. The city has new sounds now. The tap 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 of hammers on brick. The scrape of trowels spreading mortar. The creak of cranes lifting beams. Construction sounds. Hope sounds. London rebuilding itself one brick at a time. But underneath, if you listen carefully, you can still hear the old sounds. The cry of street vendors, the argument of neighbours, the bells of churches. London's voice survived, even if its body didn't. There are monuments now. A tall column near where the fire started, commemorating the disaster and the rebuilding. It's nice, in a look, we survived something horrible kind of way. Tourists come to see it. Yes, tourists. London burning made international news. Now people want to see where it happened. Disaster tourism. Humans are strange creatures. The bakers are back on Pudding Lane. Different bakers in different buildings, but the bread still smells the same. Thomas Fariner, whose oven started it all. He survived, rebuilt, kept baking. Had to. What else was he going to do? London doesn't have much use for former bakers. It does have use for current ones. Life goes on. You think about leaving sometimes. On bad days, when the memories are too strong. On hard days, when the work is too much. On dark days, when winter feels endless and spring feels impossible. But you don't leave. This city, this burned and rebuilt city, this scarred and healing city, it's home. It's where your story lives. Where else would you go? The children playing in the streets now have no memory of the fire. To them, London has always been brick, has always had regulations, has always been careful with flame. They play different games than children before the fire. Less catch the rat and more build the house. Less apprentice and master and more architect and builder. The fire changed even the games children play, but they still play, still laugh, still run through streets that once ran with fire. Life insists on continuing, even in the shadow of disaster, especially in the shadow of disaster. That's the real victory over the fire. 2-8. Not the buildings rebuilt or the fortunes restored, but the simple fact of children playing where children once fled. As the sun sets over this new old city, painting the brick buildings orange, and you try not to think about why that colour bothers you, London prepares for night. Candles are lit carefully. Fires are banked properly. Watchmen begin their rounds, actually watching this time. The city that burned has learned to fear fire. Good. Fear keeps you careful. Careful keeps you alive. But London has learned something else too. It's learned that it can survive anything. Roman abandonment? Survived. Viking raids? Survived. Norman conquest? Survived. Plagues? Survived. Civil war? Survived. 4 days of apocalyptic fire? Survived. London is too stubborn to die, too contrary to stay down, too bloody-minded to admit defeat. You're part of that now. Part of London's story of survival. Your grandchildren will tell their grandchildren that their ancestor lived through the Great Fire, saw London burn and helped it rise. Was there for the ending and the beginning. That's your place in history, not as a name in a record book, but as one of thousands who refused to let a city die. The bells ring across the city, forward this time, not the backward peals of alarm. All is well, they say. All is well in London town. And for the first time in 5 years, you almost believe them. Tomorrow, you'll wake up and continue rebuilding, continue living, continue being part of London's endless story of destruction and renewal. But tonight, as you walk home through streets that once ran with fire, past buildings that rose from ashes, among people who remember and people who've forgotten, you allow yourself one moment of pride. You survived the Great Fire of London. Not because you were special, not because you were prepared, not because you were brave or smart or lucky, but because when the worst happened, you kept going. When the world burned, you didn't. When London fell, you helped it stand back up. And that, more than any monument or memorial, is how ordinary people defeat extraordinary disasters. One day at a time. One brick at a time. One stubborn refusal to quit at a time. The fire is long out. The rebuilding continues. And somewhere in this new London, in this city of brick and memory, of scars and hope, of endings and beginnings, you've found your place. It's not the place you had before. Nothing is what it was before. But it's yours, and it's enough. London endures. So do you. And Murphy? Murphy's probably wondering when I'm going to finish this story and take him for his walk. Fair enough, boy. Fair enough. Even Bigfoot knows when it's time to close the book on a disaster. The Great Fire of London is history now, just another chapter in the endless story of human stubbornness in the face of catastrophe. Just another reminder that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is also the thing that shows you exactly how strong you really are. Sleep well, fellow wanderers, and maybe check your smoke detectors one more time. You know, just in case. The fire always starts when you least expect it.